Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well on this sunny, windy, stormy. No, let me stop. But I hope you're doing well on this day. Whatever conditions it is, I hope it's not too bad. For me right now, it's actually a quite windy and slightly um, sunny day. It's not as sunny because it's now evening time, but it feels good outside, and yeah, it's what I would call a fairly beautiful day. But yes, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for clicking this video, and I'm so happy once again to even be speaking and recording myself. I'm currently in a public space. I am currently on my community college campus, and so it's slightly a different background um, than where I read in the first chapter of this series of this Canadian literature book called Moon of the Crusted Snow. By the way, I'm looking down because I have it next to me, and I'm so excited to be continuing on with this series and on my journey to becoming a more avid reader. So we're going to be reading chapter 2 today. I'm very excited because I've not really read this chapter. I read I think 1 or 2 pages, but I've not really sat down and read it and grasped the words well. So hopefully, as I record this video and as I read, we're able to sort of discuss together. So if you watched my last video, thank you first of all, and secondly, you're probably not aware of sort of what we talked about. We in chapter 1 we were introduced to the main character, Even White Sky, who is a man who is from the Anishinaabe community in the northern part of, it's northern part of Canada. That's what I mentioned last video. And it's a small indigenous community who are very sort of focused on hunting, fishing, and living on their land. It's their way of giving back. It's sort of their tradition. And when it comes to the topic of giving back, when they hunt and do all these things, fish, they feel as though nurturing not only themselves and their family, but also those around them, like loved ones, relatives, or even those who were unable to hunt during the period in which there are many animals to be hunted, or maybe a season of hunting, maybe they didn't get to get enough food sources. So in their culture, doing things like giving back is a way of just giving back and honoring their customs and their norms and their tradition. And so this book has been very interesting to me because I've never read Canadian literature, and just reading this, it's slowly shaping my perspective. And like the many books I've read, they do a huge role of shaping my perspective. And so I'm always very just moved um, by reading books with different perspective, because then I'm able to see the differences and the similarities of just our sort of human cultures. I think culture is a beautiful thing, and I'm always very interested in storytelling about just people's identity and their backgrounds. And so I will start now on chapter 2. They awoke to the rapid, high-pitched buzz of their alarm. Dull red numbers announced that it was 6:30. Hearing nothing from the children's rooms, Nicole hit the snooze button. Even rolled over, away from her. The light of dawn had yet to creep in through the cracks in the curtain. Sleep was still thick in the room. The alarm buzzed again. And this time, Nicole sat up and shifted her feet over the side of the bed. She stood up, reached for her robe in the dark, and slipped it on. "You got them?" mumbled Even. "Yeah, don't worry about it. You had a long day yesterday. Go back to sleep. I'll get them breakfast." Excuse me. He awoke some time later to the chatter of the children in the kitchen. He heard something about one of their favorite TV shows that he couldn't quite make out. Satellite must still be out, he thought. They're usually not talking this much. He located some clothing on the floor and pulled on a pair of track pants and a t-shirt. He squinted as he stepped out of the hallway into the kitchen. The sun was now well above the horizon, shining through the big picture window that faced east. Nagon's pigtails swayed as she turned her head in his direction. "Hi, Daddy." "Mino Giseb," Even answered. "Good morning, my sweetheart." He approached the table and kissed her on the forehead. She beamed at him while he turned to greet his son. "Hey, bud." Even rubbed the boy's short brown hair. "Good morning, Dad," Megan replied. Even walked into the kitchen, kissed Nicole on the cheek, and poured himself a cup of black coffee. The morning sun caught the maple and oak trees in front of the house, burnishing them gold and rich brown. The trees and some of the wildlife around them were preparing to sleep, while humans prepared for the great annual test. Even sometimes envied the trees and black bears that could shut down for the winter. A sip of the hot, strong coffee snapped him out of his reverie, and he walked over to look at his phone that he had left to charge. Nangons and Maigon smiled at him from the phone screen. No notifications or messages. Not even a text, though his phone had been dead the whole afternoon before. He picked it up for a closer look and saw that there were no bars shown in the upper left corner. "No cell service," he muttered. "Really?" said Nicole. "I'll go check mine." She walked to the bedroom and emerged a moment later, peeping down at her own cell phone. Mine's out too. Cell service outages were common. The cell tower had gone up only a few years before, when the community was finally connected to the wider hydro grid. Even then, it only happened because the contractors from the south wanted a good signal while they built the massive new hydro dam further north on the bay. The tower had stayed up after they left, a new luxury for people who lived on the reserve. Many of them hadn't yet developed any sort of serious dependence on the service. An outage didn't evoke any real sense of frustration or panic. "What you doing today, Dad?" His son's voice brought Evan's focus from the phone service back to his family. He turned to face the kitchen. "Nigris, my boy," he said. "I got a lot of work to do. A muzu, gave himself to us yesterday." "You got a moose?" "Yep, a big one. It took me a long time to get him out of the bush. That's why I wasn't home when you went to bed last night." "Cool." The boy was eager to join his father on his first hunt, but that was still a few years away. Even first went on an actual hunt with his own father when he was 9, after spending years learning about the land. He had shot his first buck that fall. They didn't offer tobacco when they killed animals to eat back then. Even only learned about the ceremony years earlier when an elder took it upon herself to teach him and some of the other young people the old ways. Maigan shoved the last spoonful of cereal into his mouth. He dropped the spoon and cupped his small brown hands under the bowl, lifting it to slurp up the last of the milk. Nicole emerged from the bedroom in a pair of jeans and a gray hoodie, her hair gathered in a tight bun. She urged her son to put his bowl in the sink and get dressed for school, while Evan cleared the rest of the table. He peeled the dirty dishes on the counter, plugged the sink, and turned on the hot water. As he squeezed a bottle of yellow dish soap into the water, he wondered how long the cell phones would be down. Shit, he thought. I was gonna ask Isaiah to come over and help with the rest of that mousse. He stopped himself and smiled. The landline. It was still what most of the older generation used, and since the cell tower was unreliable, Evan and Nicole kept it around. Evan picked up the house phone, relieved that the familiar dial tone still hummed. Can I come hunting too, Daddy? Said Nagons behind him. Nadanis, he replied. Yes, you can, my girl, but not until you're older. Where's the Muzu? Muzu Gunjin. It's outside. Can I see it? Win, not yet, my sweetheart. He's not ready. Okay. He took her small hand in his and looked down into her wide brown eyes and smiled. Her pigtails stuck out like antennas on the old TVs. But the little girl's questions often lingered in Evan's mind long after she asked them. He believed she held the wisdom of countless generations, despite her youth. She was an old soul. He wanted her to question everything. He wanted her to grow up to be strong and intelligent. He wanted her to be a leader. The morning silence was eerie, but soothing. Often, the TV would be on throughout the weekday morning routine, and again on Saturdays for cartoons. He hadn't even thought about turning it on, and the kids didn't seem to mind that they ate at the table rather than on the couch. I don't know what she said to them, he thought, but it worked. Maybe they could keep the TV off in the mornings. Even assumed that the satellite reception was still out, or maybe Nicole just didn't even bother to check. Either way, the kids always listened to her, and he appreciated how she guided their children, patiently and with love and respect. He tried to think about how her parenting fit into the teachings he was learning, but his mind was racing, so he ran his fingers above his bust hair and let it go. There had been no satellite TV in the community when Evan was little, just a CBC signal from a tower near the bay that the rabbit ears would pick up as long as there wasn't a storm. But people did have VCRs, and the tapes kept him and his siblings entertained when they were inside. Mostly he remembered playing outside. Nicole came back with a dressed My God, in town. Okay, I'm taking the boy to school. We'll be there. Even looked at their daughter, who was still at the table. She flashed a bright smile. Let's go wave bye to your brother, he said. He picked her up, and they stood in the window to wave as Nicole and Megan got in the blue pickup and pulled out of the driveway. Megan was one of only a dozen kids in his class. The community's elementary school was small, with an enrollment of a little more than 100. But it was in a new building, and the people on the reserve were happy that their kids could finally be educated in a decent facility. Nicole and Evan had gone to school in moldy prefab makeshift classrooms that had finally, blessedly crumbled. There had been lots of infrastructure improvements on the reserve over the last few years, including their connection to the hydro grid. The old diesel generators that had run their light bulbs and appliances for decades were still around, but they didn't need them anymore. They remained for backup, and the band no longer had constantly trucking fuel for them. The hydro lines had also opened up a permanent service road that ran some 300 kilometers south and connected to the main highway. They relied less on the airstrip for supplies and travel and now had the freedom to drive out on their own theoretically. Theoretically. The weather and lack of maintenance often played havoc with that fine thought. Ivan looked down at Nagons. This place has changed a lot, he thought. It will be a lot better for you, my little star. Once Nicole returned, Ivan finished tidying the kids' toys in the living room and poured himself another cup of coffee. He sipped slowly from the blue mug and looked out the kitchen window. Better get to work, he thought. I'm going out to the shed, he called. Gotta finish up the moves. It was cold outside, and the scent of withering leaves on the ground was potent. A fire burned somewhere nearby. Even instinctively looked to the south for any signs of movement or life. Everything, everything was still except for the sound of an engine in the distance, a four-wheeler approaching from the heart of the village that lay to the north of his home. Soon the vehicle came into view, and he recognized his friend, Isaiah North, in full rest fall fashion, neon vest over a camouflage jacket. Isaiah pulled into the driveway, parked beside the blue pickup, and turned off the engine. When he stood to dismount, his tall, lean frame towered over the truck's roof. What's going on, bud? Not much, Izzy, Even replied. Was just going out to the shed. Got a moves yesterday. Good. Bull? Yep. Isaiah took off his cap and ran his right hand through his short, thick hair as Ethan walked down the porch stairs. Side by side, even was a head shorter than his friend. I figured you must have shot something, Isaiah said. I didn't hear from you all day. I was gonna text you this morning, but I got no service. Yeah, me neither, said Even, pulling his phone out of his pocket to check again. Still nothing. I was gonna text you too, but figured you just come by anyways. Can't keep me away when you got a big old bull nearby. The friend proclaimed, stretching his arms wide. All right then, you can help me finish. You can help me finish him off. Maybe I'll let you have the back strips. Oh, cheap. Even chuckled and gave Isaiah a punch in the shoulder as he walked past him to the shed. And that is the end of chapter 2. That was fairly short. Not as long as chapter 1, but that was interesting. So let's just sort of discuss slightly about it. So, beginning of chapter 2, we notice sort of the family's routine. So we become aware of the time the kids are supposed to be awake, which I remember was like maybe around 6:30, because we, based on what was included in the first few sentences, dull red numbers announced it was 6:30, which sort of highlighted that maybe that was the time that they get up and sort of get their kids ready. And so in this case, because Even was tired, Nicole was sort of the one getting the kids ready. And then we become aware of sort of, there's still no light, the satellite was still out, because obviously when the kids wake up in the morning, when they're usually sort of watching TV, they're not, watching TV, instead they're talking to one another. And so Even find that sort of unusual, right? Okay, and then as we continue to read, we sort of have a little moment in which Naguns and Megan have a little moment with their dad. And then after that, we notice that Megan, the 5-year-old boy, has to go to school. We become aware that sort of the schools are like small. They're quite small in the community, because the community is small. I highlighted one part that was like, Megan was one of only a dozen kids in his class, meaning only out of 12 kids, he was one of the 12 kids, which is crazy. That's such a small size class, but we shouldn't be surprised, because the community is quite small based on what we're reading. And so that's one interesting thing I highlighted. As we continue to read, we sort of see the guns wanted to also play a role in sort of hunting with daddy, or even Megan wanted to hunt with his dad, because which is funny. And then later on, towards almost the end, we notice that we become introduced to another character, who happened to be Even. So we know Even is kind of like the protagonist here. He's one of the main characters, and we become introduced to Even's friend, Isaiah North. And yeah, he comes by, because he usually comes by, but obviously Even wanted to text him prior that, he got a bull, a moose, and for him to just come by and help out. But he wasn't even able to help text Isaiah, as we remember towards the beginning that or towards the end of the last chapter, that he thought about Isaiah and he still hasn't texted Isaiah. Or maybe even was this chapter that he sort of remembers. Oh yeah, it was this chapter that he sort of mentioned on page 15. I was gonna ask Isaiah to come over and help with the rest of that moose, but he wasn't able to text him because, the main sort of setting yet. There's still no power. The satellites are out. The kids are not watching TV. So that's interesting to know about the setting. And so wow, but Isaiah obviously because he's Evan's friend and most likely have been friends for a while, comes over regardless because he usually does, and so that works out well, despite it's not having electricity to text him, and so they ended up going to the shed together and then working on cutting parts of the moves, and then we have a little funny moment towards the end, and that's sort of like the summary of chapter 2. It wasn't as long, but it was informative, and it's slowly building up that sort of plot, and I'm interested and I'm ready to read chapter 3 next. But thank you so much, guys, for even watching until this point of the video. I'm always very appreciative. Like I said, this is not only helping me become an avid reader, but I'm also hoping that by just listening to me read these stories and sort of share my perspective, you're sort of hopefully moved by the story that I'm reading. And hopefully these sort of videos motivate you to maybe even pick up a book, and specifically even pick up this book if you maybe have read it before and you just want to read it again, or maybe you're currently reading it and you just want to hear somebody else's perspective, or sort of somebody else just reading it to you, and so I'm very appreciative. And on my past video I got a few comments, so I just want to say shout out to those who commented and even maybe liked the video and hopefully subscribed. I really it really means a lot, and these are the things that just makes me happy, because I know that someone is at least one person or maybe two or even more is watching, and your kind comments really do mean a lot. And so I hope you continue to tune into my channel and support me. And yes, I hope you have a wonderful one. And yeah, thank you. And last but not least, please kindly subscribe, comment, and like this video. Bye.